Ever since my mother passed, whenever I'm alone at home, my mother-in-law and Mary make it a habit to drop by unannounced. "We're here visiting you, and you can't even offer a little hospitality? We'll just have to order steaks delivery again, and you're gonna pay for it." Mary giggles at her side. It's been 2 years of this hellish routine. Now, both my son and daughter have left home to attend college in the city. However, on a day when it was just my husband and me, Daniel said something unbelievable. "My folks and my sister's family are moving in next week, so clear out your room." And then he told me I was in the way and to get out. This house, which was originally my family home, and now being told to leave it, that's something I cannot forgive. Faced with this, I didn't hesitate to decide on a course of action. "Fine, I'll just clear the house out entirely," I said. Daniel smirked maliciously, thinking he'd won. He didn't know what was coming. He went off on a business trip. And I immediately called to begin the process I had planned. I got everything arranged before Daniel came back, and then I left the house. I can just imagine the look on Daniel's face when he returns. My name is Sofia Garcia. I'm a 48-year-old housewife living in my childhood home since getting married. After graduating from high school, I went to college and found a job in New York, where I spent all of my single years. However, during a trip back home to Nebraska, I ended up attending a local matchmaking party. I had no intention of moving back to Nebraska, but I was coerced into going by the people around me. I'm the type who can't say no when asked. So I went, and the local men, not often blessed with such opportunities, were quite eager, to put it mildly. It was like everyone was looking around with greedy eyes, desperately grabbing at any opportunity they could find. Overwhelmed by the atmosphere, I decided to just bide my time until it was appropriate to leave. Next to me, there was a man sitting quietly by himself. That was Daniel Garcia, the man who would become my husband. Since I was bored being on my own, I shared some food with him. Then, the man said as a thank you, and brought me some food. Daniel was a man of few words, but seemed diligent and sincere, and I found myself drawn to him. After all, if went back to New York, I had no boyfriend and no significant position at my company. Furthermore, by that time, my father had passed away, and since I had no siblings, my mother was living alone. I was tired of city life and began to feel that marrying and settling down in my hometown wouldn't be so bad. So, I married Daniel, and we began living in my family home. Daniel was open to living with my mother because his sister, Mary, and her husband were already living with his parents. Daniel and I were blessed with 2 children, a son and a daughter, and we should have been living a happy married life. But after my mother passed and the children became independent and left the house, I faced an unbelievable misfortune. Daniel, always a quiet man, spoke very little at home after we got married. He didn't involve himself more than necessary in parenting. Perhaps you could say Daniel was a calm type of husband, a gentleman if spoken well of. Having been an only child, I was always close to my mother, consulting her on everything. So, I believe I've been able to raise my kids ideally with the help of my mother. This perfect life changed abruptly right after my mother passed away. My mother had always found joy in taking care of the family, and after the kids went off to college in the city and left the house, she quickly lost her spirits. And then, before long, she departed to heaven. I had thought that now, with just Daniel and me, we'd spend our days peacefully as a couple. But after my mother died, Daniel's personality changed completely, as if he flipped over his hand. The man who was once so gentle suddenly started calling me you in a rude tone and became overbearing. "Hey, you. If you're not busy, at least make some coffee," he would say while sprawly lying in the living room daily, bossing me around. He had never even lain down outside our bedroom before. What on earth happened? Maybe he had been tiptoeing around my mother, his mother-in-law, all this time. But now, he's become arrogant and condescending in ways I've never seen before, even me as his wife. Maybe he feels it's time to let his hair down now that he doesn't have to tiptoe around my mother, but this sudden change has taken me by surprise. Even our children, who come home occasionally, were stunned by Daniel's transformation. What's worse, when they do come back, Daniel just stays glued to the TV and won't move from the living room. And if the children even try to change the channel, he snaps, "Ah, you're in the way. Go somewhere else." This has made them quite unhappy. It seems they're uncomfortable being around their father Daniel, who is now so boldly asserting his presence in a home where they were originally nurtured by me and my mother. Consequently, our children who used to come back for every long weekend now only return for certain holidays. No matter that the in-laws are gone, this attitude is too much. I couldn't take it anymore and decided to casually remark Daniel. "Hey, dear. You seem different lately, what's up with that?" "Different? What do you mean? Maybe since my mother passed? You used to be so gentle, but now you seem quick to anger." When I said that, Daniel's eyes narrowed and he answered with a voice that had an edge to it. "What are you talking about? I've been tiptoeing around your mother all this time. But now that she's gone, I'm the one who calls the shots in this house. If there's something I don't like, it's only natural that I get angry." I had never seen Daniel so intimidating before, and I recoiled in fear. It seems that all the care he took around my mother had been a source of stress for him. However, I never in my wildest dreams thought that Daniel would change so drastically. Ever since, I've had to tread carefully around Daniel, as if to handle him with kid gloves. The misfortunes that have befallen me since my mother passed away don't stop there. I work part-time until 3 p.m. and then return home to do the housework, which has become my daily routine. When my mother was alive, we would enjoy our tea time together at this hour. Now, it's become a completely dreary time. When I get home, my mother-in-law and Mary are waiting at the entrance. "Oh, Sophia, you're quite late. We've been waiting out here in the cold for 40 minutes, that's right. We heard you finish work at 3 p.m., so we came to match that time. Why are you so late?" "Yeah, Sophia. We heard you get off work at 3 p.m., so we timed our visit to match that. Why are you so late?" Indeed, these two have learned that my part-time job ends at 3 p.m., and they've taken to showing up at our house at this time every day. In their home, my in-laws live with Mary and her husband. Mary has taken her husband's surname, Williams, and like us, she has had her husband move into her parental home. They don't have children, and Mary, who hasn't worked for a long time, is always clinging to my mother-in-law. I used to think my mother-in-law and Mary were kind people when my mother was alive. But just like Daniel, these two started to speak very frankly to me as soon as my mother passed away. Sorry about that. I was doing some shopping on the way back. Thinking of the complaints I would hear later if I showed any displeasure to these two, I can only obey meekly. And so, I always end up letting them into the house. Once inside, I need to change my clothes and put away the groceries I've bought. But before I can even do that, my mother-in-law starts to nag. "We've come all this way to visit and you don't even offer us a drink? We have no choice but to order steaks delivery again, so you'll pay for it." Mary laughs alongside her. Even though it's nearly 4 p.m., they decide to order delivery food from a restaurant at such a late hour. And, as always, I'm the one who ends up paying. I've been living these hellish days for 2 years now. Of course, I've talked to Daniel about it, but he never takes my side. Mom and Mary think you're lonely after losing your mother, they're just trying to be thoughtful. Complaining would be ungrateful. But every time they come, we only eat expensive steaks, and I'm always the one paying. It's making us run a deficit every month. You should just manage our finances better. If it's not enough, find a part-time job that pays more. Besides, you took great care of your own parents but seem cold to my family, don't you think? When he puts it that way, I'm left speechless. I don't want to quit my current part-time job because the people there are nice. Despite living at my parents' home, I have never neglected my in-laws' home. I've always made an appearance when Daniel's relatives gathered, and I brought Christmas gifts and birthday presents to his parents' house on some occasions. They used to be kind to me whenever I showed up, Mary and my mother-in-law alike. Why did their attitudes change so abruptly after my mother passed away? I don't know what to do, and the stress has been gradually mounting. Amid these troubling days, an even more astonishing situation arose. One evening, Daniel came home from work and announced something unbelievable. My parents and sister's family are moving in next week, so get your room cleaned out. What? What's happening all of a sudden? I panicked at this abrupt news. What do you mean, what's happening? It's just like I said. Everyone's moving in this Saturday, so hurry up. That meant I had only 3 days left. Daniel had decided this major change without consulting me, just arranged it with his own family. Hey, you can't just decide this on your own. This house originally belonged to my family. Quiet. It doesn't matter who it originally belonged to. I'm the head of this house now, and I make the decisions. No complaining. I was so shocked by his horrible attitude that I dropped the dish I was washing, and it shattered on the floor. Then, with a sharp crack, the plate I was holding split into 2 pieces. You're so clumsy. That's why I've become sick of being around you. What do you mean by that? I was caught in Daniel's words, wanting to know what he meant. Then Daniel replied with a sneer and a sarcastic tone. Since it's a good opportunity, let me be clear. Mom and Mary like this house and want to live here, but it seems they don't like you. I don't like being with you either. So, since you're in the way, you need to get out. But that's... Yeah, of course, just like I said earlier, pack up all your stuff. I'll be away on a business trip for the next 3 days, so get it done by then. Daniel had been so cruel to me. Angry at his reasoning, I decided without hesitation to take a certain action. Then, I'll clear out the entire house. When I said that, Daniel smirked maliciously. Huh, I thought you'd put up more of a fight, but you're surprisingly submissive. He seemed very pleased, thinking everything was going his way. Unaware that he would regret how he treated me in 3 days. The following day. Oblivious, Daniel left for his business trip. I immediately made a call to carry out the arrangements I had planned. And before Daniel returned, I had everything in order and left the house. I can already picture the look of surprise on Daniel's face when he comes back. The place I was headed was the apartment of my daughter, Lucy, who lives alone in New York. 3 nights ago, I had already gotten in touch with Lucy in advance. I've been waiting for you, Mom. Is everything taken care of? Yes, all set. But sorry for suddenly imposing on you like this. It's fine. But still, Dad's terrible, isn't he? To suddenly try to kick you out. Yes. But don't worry, I made sure to set things straight before I came here. Dad's going to be quite surprised later. I said that and burst into laughter with Lucy. There was a reason I had come to Lucy's place. Late into the night, as expected, Daniel called in a panic. You! What the hell is this? The house is empty. Where are all the furniture and appliances? Oh. But wasn't that what you said? To pack up all my things. I said to pack up everything in your room, not everything in the house. Indeed, Daniel had initially said, pack up your room. But after telling me to leave, he said, pack up all your stuff. You wanted me to leave, right? So, I got rid of all my furniture and appliances that I inherited from my mother. Now, your family can move in without any worries, right? Yes, the actions I had taken over these 3 days started with having all the furniture and appliances I used picked up by a recycling company. Then, I contacted movers to transport the belongings that belonged to the kids and the things I would still use to Lucy's apartment. I felt bad for the inconvenience to Lucy, but she was eager to get back at Daniel and agreed to help. After a while, Daniel, sounding a bit troubled, started to speak. Actually, the whole thing about my parents' and sister's family moving in was a lie. Mom and Mary, they both might be getting divorced. Oh, really? So, they're planning to run away to your place, huh? I retorted as if I had known all along. What? You're not surprised? They both might be getting divorced, you know? Well, I knew that already. Huh? Daniel sounded baffled. I had made sure to contact my father-in-law and Mary's husband, Anthony, over these 3 days. So, I was fully aware of the whole situation with the in-laws. Actually, Anthony is from New York, and he had been interested in a local revitalization matchmaking event held in our area, so he participated on a whim. There, he was liked by Mary, who approached him aggressively, and even her mother persuaded him persistently until he agreed to marry her. Then, at the request of Mary and my mother-in-law, he ended up moving into the in-laws' house. After getting married, the mother-in-law, who was biased towards Mary, let her do whatever she wanted, and it seems Anthony had a hard time because of their capricious behavior. Moreover, Mary stopped cooking once she started coming to my place in the evenings. Well, it makes sense since they ate so many steaks every evening, so of course they didn't cook. This had been going on for 2 years, so my father-in-law got furious and told Mary and his wife to get out. I felt relieved when Anthony told me about it. And then Daniel, hearing that his mother and Mary were about to be kicked out, decided to let them move into our house. They would be bringing just the bare minimum of their belongings, so they would be in trouble without furniture or appliances. By the way, when Daniel said he was going on a business trip, he was actually going to plead with his father to forgive the 2 women. But since his father wouldn't agree, he had no choice but to help them pack up their things. When I told Daniel everything I heard from Anthony, I could faintly hear someone say, "Well, what a calculating wife." From his end, it seemed his mother was eavesdropping. "Sophia, what are you going to do about this? We can't live like this with nothing here." "Yeah. And to think you even talked to my husband behind my back, how terrible of you." There was Mary as well. "Oh. You all seem to be in quite a bind. By the way, I also asked Anthony if he could forgive you too. He said if you spend a night to cool off and reflect, you can come back home tomorrow morning." "Really?" Mary and her mother, perhaps delighted, were making a racket with excitement. "Sophia, I take back what I said earlier. Turns out, you do have your good points, don't you?" Daniel said, sounding disappointed even though he had brought the 2 women home. "Well, it's good for the 2 of them, but what about me? Can't you at least bring back the appliances? Oh, by the way, while I was at it, I arranged to sell the house, so please move out soon, okay?" "Hey!" Daniel's voice rose, almost as if he couldn't believe what I said. "I'm your husband. How could you do this to me?" "Oh? But weren't you the one trying to kick me out? That in itself is quite the harsh treatment." Daniel fell silent, with nothing to say in return. I pressed further. "Oh, and by the way, your stuff is all still in the house, isn't it? That small desk you use as a study. Check the drawer. I've sorted out the necessary application, so just submit it properly, okay?" I could hear Daniel's footsteps as he hurried to the back room where the desk was. Opening the drawer, he muttered. This is a divorce form?" "Yes, that's right. Once you've filed, I'll proceed it through the third party. Don't joke with me. Why should we have to get a divorce?" "Well, you wanted me out, didn't you? That's the same as a divorce, isn't it?" Daniel probably never imagined that the seeds he sowed would be reaped in such a way. I thought he had gone silent, but then I heard him sobbing. Then, in a voice laced with sobs, he began to plead desperately. "Please, I'm begging you. I was wrong. I'll take care of you from now on. Can you please reconsider? I'm begging you, believe me." Daniel was saying this, but I couldn't forgive his misdeeds of caring only for his family and trying to drive me out. It was fine for him to take in his mother-in-law and Mary, but he should have consulted me first. How could I trust a husband who, after neglecting me, decided to take in his mother and sister and kick out his wife? So no matter how much he apologized now, my decision wouldn't change. And the next morning. This time, I received a phone call from Mary. "You liar, Sophia. When I got home, Dad and Anthony were gone, and on top of that, the house was already sold." Mary sounded very angry. But I remained calm and unfazed. "I didn't lie at all. I did say you could come back, but I never said that your father-in-law or brother-in-law would be waiting at home for you." Over the phone, Mary and her mother were saying to each other, "Damn it. We've been deceived." Then, noticing an unmarked envelope in the mailbox, My mother-in-law opened it and let out a loud "oh." Inside was a letter from my father-in-law addressed to his wife and Mary, and the content of the letter was that both of their husbands wanted a divorce. I had already been informed about the contents of that letter by my father-in-law. My father-in-law had long run out of patience with my mother-in-law, who lacked honesty and was always selfish. So, it seems he had been considering moving into a senior living facility by himself for quite some time. This incident had made him resolve to go through with it, and he said he was going to sell the house. Anthony, too, seems to be planning to divorce Mary, who has been spoiled rotten by her mother, and return to his parents' home in New York. Sophia! You have to do something. We'll have nowhere to live if things stay like this. I don't see how this concerns me. Why don't you go to Anthony's place and ask for forgiveness? I suggested, but it seemed Mary was too proud to admit her fault. She stayed silent and began to sob. Next to her, her mother was comforting her, saying, "Poor thing." And then, grabbing the phone from Mary, she shouted as loudly as she could, "You wicked wife! Inhuman!" I was startled by the scream, but it seemed like nothing more than sour grapes. I maintained my composure and delivered my final words. "All right, I understand. Take care and best wishes. Goodbye." I heard a "wait a minute" from the other end, but I hung up without concern. I was done being bothered by the likes of them. After all, it was their own selfish behavior that brought about this misfortune, and they treated me as the villain to the very end. Soon, I will be divorcing Daniel, making these two practically strangers. Once that happens, I likely won't have to deal with them ever again. Daniel didn't submit the divorce papers for a while after that, so I hired a lawyer and filed for divorce. As a result of the court proceedings, I was finally able to get a formal divorce from Daniel. Daniel demanded half the proceeds from the sale of the house as part of the property division, but the judge ruled it was not marital property, and his claim was denied. How can that be? I have nowhere to live. How am I supposed to survive from here on out? Daniel, enraged by the outcome of the trial, started to yell at me, but he was stopped by the judge. Daniel was completely deflated, but I couldn't find any room for sympathy. It would have been nice if at least Daniel had felt a bit sorry for the daily intrusions by his mother and Mary. My marriage with Daniel ended in the worst state possible. After that, Daniel, now also divorced like his mother and Mary, seemed to be looking for a new home. In the countryside with nothing around, there were no convenient budget hotels or inns. According to a local friend, they were seen setting up cardboard to sleep in the park. At first, Daniel called me asking for help, but recently, even those messages have stopped. Perhaps his phone service has been disconnected. Eventually, I heard rumors that they managed to move into a nearly derelict apartment on the outskirts of town. Daniel's earnings must be barely enough to get by, especially supporting a mother and Mary who have never worked. Mary, who is of an age where she could still be working actively, appears to remain unemployed. Due to her pride, she refuses to work under someone else, no matter how tough life gets. Lately, the loud arguments between the mother and Mary can be heard outside, becoming a nuisance to the neighbors. The mother-in-law, whom I once thought was favoring her kin, turned out to be only looking out for herself. Now in this situation, the non-working Mary seems to be nothing but a burden. Daniel, probably not enjoying living with these two, has recently been addicted to casinos. The earnings that Daniel works so hard for seem to be flying away on the bets at casinos. Friends living back home kept me updated via social media messaging and calls about the situation of these three. To me, it's a story that no longer matters, but when I hear it, I find myself thinking they got what they deserved. Now, I'm living in New York. Just before the divorce was finalized, I had been discussing my plans for the future with Anthony, who had already divorced Mary and returned to New York. It turned out that Anthony's brother ran a food company and offered me a job there. For a while, I stayed with Lucy, but Anthony helped me look for my own place. Thanks to him, I now live alone in a small apartment. I've been completely indebted to Anthony for everything, and I can't thank him enough. Anthony, who has gone through tough times similar to mine, and I find a lot in common to talk about. We both found our spouses at a matchmaking event aimed at revitalizing the region, and both marriages ended in failure. Perhaps that's a strange kind of fate. That matchmaking event hasn't been held for decades now. Despite everything, I still care about my hometown. Seeing fewer people getting married in that area made me worry a bit about the potential depopulation. However, it seems that matchmaking events have disappeared simply because young people nowadays use convenient apps for dating. In my hometown, especially, where encounters are scarce, many couples meet and marry through these apps. Moreover, I've heard from friends that there's been an increase in remote workers who move to the countryside in search of affordable housing. For this reason, I've been told by friends that the number of young people in my hometown is on the rise. Even though I'm away now, it's heartening to know that my hometown is becoming more vibrant. I too am thinking of eventually returning to my hometown to spend a leisurely retirement in the countryside. Lately, I've started dating Anthony with the idea of remarriage in mind.